You're on.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ikani Tamapiao, Assistant City Manager here at the City of Las Cruces, and welcome if you're coming online. We are very excited. It's a blessing and a privilege to be here in front of you all digitally and here in person. I want to thank, first and foremost, the team that helped put this meeting together. Want to say thank you to Irene Parra, Business Development Administrator from Economic Development, and to Catherine Harrison-Rogers from our Planning Department, helping to put this meeting together. Also, our Public Information Office running this to make it possible so that you online can follow us. Thank you to Adrian. And who else is in the back, Adrian? Dom. Thank you, Dom, for being there. And we appreciate it. Did I leave anyone else out from our team? Okay. So I'm going to turn over the time to Catherine, but before I do, the purpose of this meeting, just wanted to make sure that everyone understands, we as the City of Las Cruces, we don't know everything. And so we wanted to learn more about this topic, especially the topic of outdoor consumption. This is a new area. This is a new area as a whole here in the state of New Mexico. And outdoor consumption is something that, from what I believe, there is not an active license right now in the state. So we wanted to hold this discussion, regardless of what side of the spectrum you're on, whether you're for it or against it. And we wanted to learn more about this topic, learn more about perspectives. And so that is one of the purposes for this meeting. And so here, as we continue to share information with you, we have from our planning department, Catherine Harrison-Rogers, that will share with you what we are up to, what we are doing. And then after she shares what we're up to, we want to take public input from you, online as well as in person. And we are going to take notes. We are going to try to learn as much as possible today. But we know that this is just the beginning of a discussion. So before I turn over the time to Catherine, I want to share some stats, what we're doing here in City of Las Cruces. We have about 55 active applications and licenses right now. 16 of those are in the inspection phase in the cannabis industry. 12 of the 55 are completing applications, and 21 are active cannabis business licenses that we have. From a monetary standpoint and the revenues coming in the state, the top five total sales in cannabis, and many of you already know this online and in person. Albuquerque, in the months that we've been tracking, about 72 million. And Santa Fe and Las Cruces are bringing in 17 million in total revenues. Hobbs, 8 million. Rio Rancho, 8 million. Top five adult sales in adult use recreational. Albuquerque, about 38 million. Las Cruces and Santa Fe, about 9 million. Sunland Park, 6 million. And Hobbs, 6 million. Top five medical sales in the state, Albuquerque, about 34 million. Santa Fe and Las Cruces, about 8 million. Rio Rancho, 5 million. And Alamogordo, 3 million. And this is just the tip of the iceberg for the momentum on the cannabis side of where it's heading to. And this is an exciting thing if you're a business right now for cannabis. And we as a city, we are trying to stay proactive. Catherine is a proof of that, and our staff here at City of Las Cruces, they meet weekly with cannabis businesses to talk about making it easier for you to open up. And so if you are ever interested, you can come in, talk with our planning building department, and we can get you situated here in the City of Las Cruces. But with no further ado, I want to welcome you to this meeting, this forum here. I turn over the time to our senior planner, Catherine Harrison Rogers, and we'll take public input after that. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight and participating. Again, Catherine Harrison Rogers, just so everybody, I think most people in this room at least know who I am based on past discussions. Tonight, I just wanted to talk about kind of where we've been, what the rules are now, what's changing, and then the results of a survey that we recently did to sort of garner people's input related to the potential for having outdoor consumption areas associated with a licensed establishment. So just to recap kind of on the history of what's happened thus far, April 2021, of course, State of New Mexico adopted the Cannabis Regulation Act. In September of that year, we added those uses and provisions to our own codes here in the city. And in April of 2022, retail sales started. And then, of course, coming up, for those of you that don't know, we had a first read at City Council this week, and October 3rd is slated to hear some amendments to our zoning ordinance to remove some of those buffer requirements. And I'll go over that in a little bit more detail as we get further in. This is a pretty complicated, messy sort of table, maybe hard to read, but ultimately this is just showing the state license type, our own land use types, and the correlating zoning districts in which those are allowed. And I've got a little summary here that may sum it up for everybody. So much easier to read, right? Cannabis retail and micro businesses, of course, are allowed in all of our commercial zones. Cannabis industry, that's both producers and manufacturers. Those are allowed in our industrial zones. Research labs, again, in industrial zones. And then micro businesses are allowed in a couple of our zones related to large single-family, sort of rural with a special use permit. They're also allowed, of course, in those commercial zones. We have some zoning alternatives in terms of being able to achieve some of these things in sort of in our unique zoning areas. We have something called a cottage industry that allows people to combine small industrial types of uses with a retail or a service component. We also have some overlay zones in the city that do allow a variety of cannabis types of uses. And then in residential zones, there are a couple of things you can do with cannabis. Of course, there's the personal use, and then there's some limited home occupation. So for example, couriers can get a home occupation. Some artisanal products can also receive that. The conditions, I think a lot of you are really familiar with the conditions that the city placed upon cannabis uses. All uses have to be 300 feet from a school or daycare. There are exceptions for some adult learning type centers there, but these are for those schools and daycares that serve people that are under the age of 18. Cannabis retailers and micro businesses, as everybody's aware, there is no outdoor consumption. It's indoor consumption only. Those uses have to be 300 feet from single-family residential zones and also 300 feet from other retailers. And there's no consumption in C1, and that's really consistent with the fact that we don't allow for alcohol consumption in the C1 zone. Cannabis micro businesses in those rural residential zones have some additional conditions associated with those because the primary use, of course, is residential. And then cannabis industry, really the only, aside from the school and daycare provision, the only other condition placed on that is that there are some limits in terms of the size of the retail that can be associated with those. This is just a recap of some of the information that Ikani already provided us, having to do with some cannabis businesses and the current business registrations that are out there. These numbers may vary slightly compared to Ikani's. I had some updated information, and that may be the reason. But ultimately, this is just a snapshot of what we have currently. We've had a lot of applications that have been submitted. Some of those have been withdrawn. Some of those are still active. Some of those were denied. But ultimately, in my count, there were about 85, but those aren't necessarily active ones. The ones that really count are the ones that are ultimately in the inspection phase. So there are 14 applications there, meaning they're just about to be released so that people can start their businesses. And I have 22 issued business registrations, and then of course the associated types with those business registrations. Some observations and concerns over the last year. And so these are concerns that have been voiced by both the industry as well as maybe residents, and then some observations from staff. Some of the things that we've noted is that, like retail uses, for example, pharmacies or specialty retail stores or even bars, don't have any buffers associated with them, aside from some conditions having to do with some alcohol buffers related to schools and churches and things of that nature. We have not noted any unique or additional impacts that have occurred that are associated with these particular retail establishments. I even went so far as to talk to our code enforcement section, and during those discussions, there have been no additional complaints outside the norm that you expect with retail establishments. Nothing unique or individual specific to cannabis. From the industry, we've heard that there's some siting issues. The commercial nodes and corridors are typically adjacent to single-family residential zones, and it's been really problematic from what we've heard for people to find suitable locations to be able to lease or purchase that would sort of fit the mold based on these buffers. When we did an analysis of lots that were impacted by these buffers that are zoned commercially, it's 1,081 commercial lots in the city, and they're basically on those big commercial corridors that we all know about. It's Valley, it's Telshore, it's a number of them. And so it seemed particularly burdensome and unique specific to this industry. Some things to note, we have issued special use permits to deviate from some of those buffers. Those were all approved by P&Z. There's several in the queue. Because all of those are being approved because we're not noting any additional impacts, again, that's some reasoning to maybe remove some of these buffers. And then we've had some requests from the industry specifically to allow for some outdoor consumption areas in licensed facilities, hence the survey and why we've invited you all here tonight. So let's get into the results of the survey. There were some interesting findings, I thought. I have been looking over it over the past couple of weeks and ultimately waited till the bitter end to input all of the information tonight so that it was the most current, and this is as of about 4 p.m. today. We had 387 respondents. Interestingly enough, one of the questions that we asked was basically, how do people feel about the legalization of adult recreational cannabis in New Mexico? And you can see that about 40% either somewhat to strongly disapproved, about 50% somewhat to strongly approved, and there was about 9% that was neutral on the topic. Interestingly enough, most of our respondents were over the age of 35, 74%. The largest group that responded was a 35 to 44-year-old group, and then there was sort of equal portions and also quite a large grouping of those that were 65 plus, and then the 45 to 65. Something interesting to note, only 30% of the respondents are actually users of cannabis, according to the results. And the overwhelming majority of respondents were not affiliated with the industry at all. Some other highlights, when we posed some of the questions about, hey, if outdoor consumption were to be allowed, what types of outdoor consumption would you support, or would you be totally against it? And so something interesting to note is that the overwhelming majority basically were against inhalants. So that would be the smoking or the vaping in outdoor areas. Edibles, that was more of a split vote. About 47% were supportive, and about 42% were against or somewhat against. And then topicals, people didn't seem to be particularly concerned with that. That was overwhelmingly supported, with a minority against. So one of the other questions that we asked specific to outdoor consumption was, should there be conditions associated with those types of uses? And I think logically everybody agreed that there should be some sort of conditions. That could be increased setbacks or limited locations, such as just a rooftop or a concealed patio, those types of things. But it was about 70% that agreed that there should be conditions, and then there was a minority that said no conditions at all. We did pose a lot of a variety of conditions that could possibly be associated with these types of uses, as well as gave people the option just to answer their own or make up their own conditions that they thought would be suitable for these types of uses. And ultimately, the ones that sort of stood out was that limited locations, such as limiting these to rooftops or balconies or enclosed courtyards, was about 55% of respondents were supportive of those types of conditions. Another one that stood out was the minimum distancing from public areas, such as sidewalks. So to make sure that any of those public consumption areas were at least, let's say, 50 feet from a public sidewalk or what have you, just to sort of limit exposure or odors or what have you from the traveling public. So those were sort of the big highlights from this survey. Some of the next steps is, what do we do with all this information? Where are we going from here? Some of the things that are already in play are the proposal to eliminate the 300-foot buffer from single-family zones from the retailers, and also to eliminate that 300-foot buffer between retailers of the same type of use. We're also deleting that special use permit requirement that would allow you to deviate. This, of course, does not change the school buffers at all whatsoever. And then in terms of the outdoor consumption is, we want to hear from you. So that's why we're here tonight. We want to take some feedback and listen to your input and report those results of both the survey and tonight's meeting to City Council, and then make recommendations based on those results. And that's where we are. And so with that, we're happy to start taking some public input or some comments. I know that Irene is monitoring our Zoom. And then, of course, we have some microphones for folks in the room to be able to ask some questions. And I will go ahead and look to you, Connie, to see if he wants to add anything. No? All right. And so I think basically if you just want to raise your hand, we can do that, or we can see if there are any interesting questions that have popped up online. The silence is overwhelming.
I guess I'll start.
Yes, please do. If you could go, maybe go to one of the mics so that everybody can hear you and the folks online can hear you as well. Oh, there's a mic right there.
Hello, everyone. I'm TJ. I represent New Mexico Cannabis Tourism. I'm here in support of change for social consumption, outdoor consumption. I'm the producer of Las Cruces Hemp and Cannabis Festivals here in town. Having a bill like that would allow our event spaces to be able to allow us to have our participants consume in public on their property. So it's positive all the way around. It helps the community, it brings more revenue, it brings people for longer, and it gives us an opportunity to remove alcohol from the equation totally and substitute it with cannabis now. So,
thank you. Anyone else? Irene, do you have some maybe that we could pull up?
Yeah, we do have one question. So if allowed on balconies or patios, wouldn't the smell still dissipate from those areas, and how would the businesses be expected to manage that?
That's a really good question. These are all things that we would have to work through if we were to look into developing any ordinances associated with that. But there are a number of methods in terms of ventilation and a number of things that could be used to help prevent that.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brett Burke. I'm with Soul Cannabis. We have the consumption lounge here in Las Cruces right now. We worked really hard when we started the consumption lounge, and we worked closely with the state to get licensed for that and with the city to make sure that we were going to follow all of the appropriate regulations that we needed to be able to operate. And, our position is that those that go through that same rigor should be granted that same opportunity. If the people are like us and doing it right and really trying to take care of the industry and handling it in a responsible way, we can all make it happen. And what we have unique with our shop is we have a lot of unique questions like the smell. How is it going to dissipate? Well, what a better spot to come look at that. We don't have to theorize. We don't have to, see what it's going to be like. We can come see what it's like with an organization that has taken a lot of time and a lot of steps to make sure that we're doing everything that the state and local officials want us to do when it comes to smoke dissipation, when it comes to obstructing the view from the general public walking on the sidewalk. And just protecting the patients and giving them a refuge to consume their medicine. Us in our experience in consumption, we've found that a majority of our consumers are those that are either first-time consumers that need the education, which is what we really, really try to focus on in our lounge. And then also the medical patient that doesn't have another safe place to consume. Maybe they can't consume in their apartments, and so then it's only their vehicles. They're left with their vehicles smelling. If they get pulled over, that's a whole other set of problems that they'll have to face. Sidewalks, public ways, it's not a great place to be consuming cannabis. We kind of take the stance that it's similar to the end of alcohol prohibition. And at the end of alcohol prohibition, everybody got to do whatever they wanted, and it was fairly unregulated. And we saw people become irresponsible with that. And we saw overregulation, and the alcohol industry got a little bit of a scar on their name. And we don't want that with cannabis. We want to learn from history, and we want to approach it in a way that's going to work for everyone. It can work for us as business owners and getting cannabis out into the public eye and using it as medicine and introducing it to people for what it is. But we don't want to stand up here and pitch the opposite side, what the DARE program used to teach. We just have to be really honest about what cannabis is, what it can do to help individuals, and how we can use it recreationally and responsibly. And so, that is our position. If you can find the space that has the right amount of distance for that smoke to dissipate, if you've taken the steps indoors to follow the D. Johnson Clean Air Act, if you've taken the steps to make sure that cannabis isn't walking out of your lounge, no different than bar owners are taking the steps to make sure that a whiskey drink or a half-drank beer isn't walking out of their establishment and going to the car. If you're doing those things, we're being proactive. These weren't things brought to us by the state that said you need to follow these rules. These were things that we are trying to spearhead as a company to make sure that we do this industry justice and that we do it correctly, we do it responsibly, in a way that we can sustain. And I want to see everybody that's here representing the cannabis industry succeed in that movement. I want to see everybody do that, and I want to see everybody do that responsibly. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Nathan Silva. I'm representing Mylars LLC. We're a cannabis manufacturer in Las Cruces. I just wanted to say that I support outdoor cannabis consumption, and I also wanted to ask how you got the word out for the survey, because if I was aware of it, I definitely would have taken it. Same with people probably in my age group as well.
Sure. We worked with economic development and the PIO, our Public Information Office, to both put that on our website, special announcement, and then also actually send out email requests to, I think it was all the business registrations that we have on file. We also shared it with the constituent email lists that City Council has. So there were a number of ways that we tried to distribute that information. Any other questions, Irene?
We do have another question. What responsibility does the industry have to avoid an increase in drivers under the influence of cannabis?
That's a really good question. I'm not quite prepared to answer something like that. It's beyond sort of what I do, but that's a wonderful question. I think that ultimately, I think police departments, cities monitor trends. And ultimately, that's why laws get passed and changes occur over time. Yes, did you want to add something?
I would just say that's our responsibility as business owners to make sure that we don't sour that and make sure that when our customers are leaving, our patients are leaving, that they're...
Can you please speak into the microphone for the audience at home can hear it?
Not loud enough?
Well, we can all hear here, but everybody on Zoom can't, so.
No, I said that it's really up to the business owners. It's up to all of us to make sure that these people aren't leaving in a state that they're not safe to drive. You know, just because we don't have the legal limit like they do in alcohol, and we don't have that way to test immediately, we have to safeguard ourselves. If we don't, we're going to get pulled back by regulation, and we're going to see an era where cannabis, or at least cannabis as we see it in New Mexico now, goes back into prohibition. And it is ever so important that we do this correctly and responsibly, and for the concerns of that, it comes down to us. In our company, we bear responsibility as owners, and the regulations we put in place and what we train our employees to do in the lounge and for people that are consuming. And that's a heavy burden to carry. But it's something that we're willing to do to lead this industry into what we know it can be and should be. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think we had a comment over here.
Sorry to make you run around. My name is Scott. I work for High Horse Cannabis Company. Once again, I think the city of Las Cruces is doing a wonderful job. You're very proactive. You're very interested in hearing feedback from the industry. You know, I think that there's a couple of things that need to be taken into consideration long term for this. I think this is initial baby steps in what outdoor consumption could look like, but there are other things that need to be considered in the future at some point in time, most likely starting at the state and then kind of working their way down. All those future steps would require much more public education and engagement, I think. You know, I don't think tonight's for those conversations. I think in terms of the outdoor consumption areas, it makes a lot of sense to not force everybody indoors. And so when the city put that restriction on, you know, in the beginning, I think there were a lot of us that were kind of scratching our heads like, what's the fear here? Why are you saying you can only have a consumption area indoors? And hopefully what we've seen since is that it works, it's fine, it's not a problem, there's nothing to be afraid of. And since we have a consumption area doing it right now, we should allow all of them to do it. And so let's formalize it through this process and allow the industry to thrive. So thanks for your approach, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Looks like we have a comment over here.
Awesome. Hello, my name is Yajesma Orozco. I am part owner at Icana LLC. We just have been working with our retail. We are currently working on our consumption, our production side, and manufacturing, which is really exciting. To add to a little bit of how can we kind of control of the consumption and when people drive, I feel like that falls back on us, on educating the patient and educating them. Well, this many milligrams, if you feel this altered, that's when you know when to stop. Also by the education of the science behind it, how it affects everybody's body very differently. If somebody has cancer or somebody is very healthy, low milligram dosage, micro dosage in a consumption lounge is something we also need to educate, whether if you're an owner, bud tender, and I think, once again, that falls back on education, and we can provide a safe space for people. We can provide a safe space for people, whether, you know, they are trying to take a break and they can't consume at home or they can't consume in certain locations. I feel like we open up those doors and comfort and ability for people to consume comfortably in a safe space. And I feel like opening that up, I feel like people can definitely use a little bit more vitamin D being outside. But yeah, it would definitely be a great opportunity for everybody.
Thank you. We have somebody over here.
Yes, my name is Jordan Barber. I'm with Roundhouse Reserve. I also stand in the position of allowing outdoor consumption with certain restrictions. I think when it comes to prohibiting the patient to consuming only indoors, it's unfair. You know, cannabis is legal. I think it should be treated as so. And when you have a patient coming into your establishment that doesn't smoke, and you are making them be around smoking, I think it's just completely unfair to the patient. I think there definitely should be some regulations concerning setbacks and how to enclose these situations when they're taking place. And I think it's really that simple. It's just us as business owners taking accountability and going in there and saying, hey, you know, these type of regulations need to be enforced, but at the same time, I think it should be open to the public to the people that want to consume, that don't want to be around the smoke, that kind of maybe want to get outside. And just like Brett was saying, you don't want to limit that individual to the sidewalk and public spaces and cars and things of that nature. So, thank you.
I think that we have to look at the consumption licenses that are currently operating in the state of New Mexico and in the municipal territory. If we look at overturning the ordinance as well as the licensure regulation for consumption from on-site regulated state process CCD issued in approved locations, we devalue the individuals in the companies such as ours that have made the investment to go through the rigorous control division and monitor ourselves and educate our patients as well as treat our substance in a regulated manner. If we allow consumption as a free-for-all, we have lost the economic standpoint that we're working towards with cannabis. That is what has happened historically in the state of New Mexico. We have deregulated our industry to a point that we can no longer go back. We have to look at controlling the company and allowing the investment to occur on the municipal and the state level. More than one occasion, we've had the state pay our company a visit, and we have gone ahead and followed suit with the processes that they have put upon us to keep going with the regulated consumption, indoor and outdoor. The focus right now is outdoor. However, as we have seen at our company, you can consume outdoor. There's a way to combine the license with the amendment to the current law that is in place with the municipal government. We have to look at analyzing that.
For you guys that don't know me, my name's Quan Ponchak, so I lost my voice this week. I'm with Soul Cannabis. Just a point on, drivers, people that are leaving your facility. I think that one thing we need to stay focused with as a state, this is still a medicine. It's a medicinal product, whether you look at it recreationally or medicinally, it functions the same with the user. We all have an end result that we're trying to gain with the medicine, and therefore it acts different than alcohol or any other substance that we control while we're driving. These regulations have posed a real bad bar on cannabis and what we see as it in the public. And so when we try to regulate on the consumption level when we are driving, it's posing that it's still a threat to the non-consumer. What we need to is open up that thought that this is still a patient-oriented market, regardless if it's recreational or if it's medical. And if that medicine is being used as such, then that might be for the service of driving. That might be for the service of going to work. That might be for the service of taking care of one's kids. That might be for the service of whatever that individual sees fit medicinally. And so those subjects are what we need to look at when we're seeing consumption and driving that differs versus alcohol. We have an alcohol standard, and just like Brett said, we have a very, very good track record with alcohol and knowing its effects when it's false. And so with cannabis, we don't have that yet, and we have to be cautious on how we approach that. But if we overregulate at the start, we're going to pose a threat to the end when it comes down to the medicinal user, and that's what we started this industry for. We started it for the medicinal user, and if we're using it for the medicinal user, then we have to look at their uses for it, and that could be for the consumption and use of driving. Oh, and outdoor consumption. Yeah, I know that's the topic, but I was, talking.
True.
But thank you guys.
Thank you. And I do want to just clarify for everyone in the room and also on Zoom that when we're talking about allowing outdoor consumption, again, it is associated with a licensed facility. So it's not public consumption, just, smoking on the sidewalk or vaping on a sidewalk or what have you. So it is in a licensed facility, just to be clear. Any other questions or comments? I'm going to look to Irene to see if she has any more.
So how should the city and the industry take into consideration parents who are concerned about secondhand smoke and the exposure to their children?
That's a really good question, and I think that's one of the reasons we're having meetings like this. These are some of the discussions that we'll be having with City Council and as the policymakers. They'll provide us some guidance, and we're just initiating this, and so there will be some discussion and some research having to do with maybe how to dissipate that or what types of distances we need to make sure that that's not an issue moving forward. But those are all things that we'll be looking at.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Tim Pitts. I'm Deputy Director for Community Development. My role is primarily the regulation of cannabis and other businesses, and so I probably know most of you from some time in the past talking about what we're doing. I do want to just clarify, currently outdoor consumption areas are not legal in the city of Las Cruces. There are no approved outdoor consumption areas. So I just want to put that out there. I do not want there to be a belief that there is a legal, approved outdoor consumption area. Okay.
It looks like we have someone with a comment over here.
Hi, my name is Erica Rowland, and I'm a third-generation farmer. I came from Albuquerque today. My family specialized in gardening and life experiences for New Mexico for over 60 years. I'm currently building a cannabis country club in the North Valley of Albuquerque, focused on wellness, education, and agro-tourism. I want to specifically thank you all for having this meeting, and the accessibility and the commentary. To have an open conversation is a breath of fresh air. I really appreciate the professionalism. This is a huge step, just having a conversation with people that consume cannabis and people that regulate cannabis. New Mexico is an open-air, 11-month out of the year recreational state. Let's look safe and not silly. New York State allowed outdoor consumption at their state fair this year. We, however, are still getting the wrong ideas. We're nearly almost 1,000 cannabis-approved applications in less than a year, and now there is nowhere to consume these products safely and legally besides personal residence and the gray area of everywhere else. HB 12, the Cannabis Regulation Act, states indoor and outdoor consumption being permissive within certain requirements. Santa Fe County and Bernalillo County have simply not educated themselves and for what's allowable and what is not. This lack of education and lack of conversation has led to fall back on the extremely restrictive indoor consumption requirement. I'm not sure if you're aware, but simply the filtration system for indoor separate buildings, if you can find one, somewhat affordably, is upwards of $200,000. $200,000 for air filtration when we could just go outside. We're limiting access, we're enforcing the stigma, and please allow allowances already within the law to move forward for our state with outdoor consumption. We all remember the glass fish bowls in the airport as we walked by, as we connected to different gates. Don't tell me you didn't judge, misconceive, and think less of the people in there. We're aiming for professionalism and legitimacy here. You don't have to use cannabis to support those that do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ziv. I'm with Mesilla Valley Extracts. My partner owns it. They are planning on working on a consumption lounge outside, and I was wondering, do city rules apply to the county? And if so, what would be the limitations on alcohol and cannabis?
Sure. So our rules do not, they end at the municipal line, and then the county has their own rules, which I think are similar but differ slightly from ours. In terms of cannabis and alcohol, the state actually doesn't allow a permit for alcohol at the same location as a permit for cannabis. There are some questions out there because we've heard from some establishments that perhaps have suites but also share facilities, and I'm not quite sure. That's a sort of a state question to answer how they would regulate that, because our zoning would say sure, it doesn't matter, but those are really state rules. Right now there's a separation of the two.
Okay, and then for city limits, so there has been some things that I have seen throughout city limits, and I just appreciate that we have this meeting in general. And I think that if Seoul has been doing really wonderful, I think it's into consideration that we do open other safe havens for people that want to consume and hang out with their friends. And like they were saying, sometimes it is our way of driving. It is our way of like coming to a sense of like, oh, it is my medicine, I need it, my anxiety, I cannot drive to one place to another. So we do stay at home and we are hidden, and I think that we should embrace how beautiful this medicine is and how it allows us to function day by day. That I think it's fair enough that we have the support of the city to help us accomplish that goal to create a safe space for everybody, regardless of their preference.
Thank you. Any other comments? Irene, do we have any more that have come up from Zoom?
Do we know how our police department is managing and whether or not there's been an increase in individuals driving under the influence? I don't know. I know we have anyone from PD. I don't know if anyone can speak on that.
I can't speak to that, but maybe, and I'm looking at Ikani and he's shaking his head. We don't have that information this evening, but definitely something that we can look into when these discussions happen at council.
Okay.
Sorry. My name is David Hill. I'm with High Horse Cannabis. And my stance on it is simple. I'm here to support, outdoor consumption. We know that tobacco and alcohol have been a hamper and hindrance on our medical system throughout the country. And medical cannabis and cannabis in general has kind of helped alleviate some of that stuff. So if there's just not any subjections or regulations on alcohol or tobacco users like that, I just don't see why we would hinder or anything like that, or put any regulations on tobacco users as well, or medical marijuana users.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Colt DeMorris and I'm the Director of Retail Operations for High Horse Cannabis. I'm also the Director of El Paso Normal, organization that fights in Texas to end prohibition as well, like the state of New Mexico has done. One thing that I always talk about in New Mexico is with the new and emerging market, we want to stop from strangling it with over-regulation of policy. Right now, the state has in its law a section that must require somebody that is going to go to a consumption lounge to either have a designated driver or utilize other lawful means of transportation. So I think that's something that the city doesn't need to focus on because the state already provides for that. That was just when we were here a few months ago talking about other regulations that it was the hours. The 24 hours. It's a new emerging market. We don't need to be over-regulated. Seoul has done a good job of showing that indoor and outdoor consumption lounge can be a good thing. There's people that don't want to be inside with the smokers, so the outside deal is needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, kind of leading off of that as well with overregulation in other markets. I mean, we keep saying cannabis, we keep saying marijuana. We're all businesses here. We're all doing a great job of showing that credibility as businesses. And if we look at the regulation that we're putting on marijuana, then we need to start putting that pushback with alcohol. There's plenty of us in here that can say we all have children. I have a son myself. When it comes to sight unseen products, people are out on the main drag with a beer in their hand. There's somebody that can be at an open, party or event at a hotel and be walking around with a beer in their hand. That doesn't say that I want my son to see that exact same thing, but that's allowed. Because of that, we have to cross those barriers. And so when we pose regulation on an industry that's very much just a business, like all the rest, we have to look at our other businesses and see what we're doing as regulation. So when it comes to bigger topics as a state or as businesses, we have to look at that transparency and how we all formulate and are as one. So we can't just regulate us as cannabis, cannabis, cannabis. Alcohol has its same provisions, and so therefore we should say the same. So as that, I should say, we should be one and the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to touch on that a little bit again because, you know, we're trying to fight and show that cannabis doesn't need to be regulated like alcohol. It's a different substance, a safer substance. Right now we have social settings where we can go and consume alcohol, indoors or outdoors. But I think it needs to be taken a step further, and a lot of people may not agree with me on this, but cannabis is safer than tobacco. If I wanted to, I can go outside and walk down the street smoking a cigarette and nobody's gonna bat an eye. I think it should be the same way. Ultimately, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but ultimately, the prohibition of it doesn't work. And with it being a safer substance than alcohol or tobacco, it should be treated as.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience?
I just have a quick comment. My name is Nicole Fox. I'm the co-founder of the Southwest Cannabis Trade Association. I've also authored a lot of people's licenses who are here and not here, and I'm very involved in the cannabis industry, and I just want to go on record saying that I support establishing outdoor cannabis consumption areas. Thank you.
Thanks. Missed the baby tonight. We're with an adult, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Zon Dantzler, owner of Z-Canna Health Education and Wellness. And I just wanted to share a little bit about myself and why I'm here today. First of all, we've made a capital investment in Las Cruces County, and I did that personally because I love this state. And I've been within this state probably 3 months or so, but I've lived next here and been back and forth a lot. So kudos to the state. I love it. I'm here, I'm staying, and that's great. But as a third generation educator and as a military war vet, some of the conversations that we seem to have don't really pertain to what the real business is. And the business is, this is just the same thing as anything else that we've ever done. Young man was speaking on the alcohol. I have to tell you, we were marketed alcohol as kids, so much so that we imitated drinking and smoking in schools and all of these things. So, and the candies, and that's probably why I had so many cavities. But when we think about the situation that we're in now, I think it's important to understand that I myself had an uncle who was an assistant principal in a Chicago school system, who to my face lied to me about smoking pot because of the stigma attached to it. He was a professional, and in my time in my life, I have known many professionals. I'm standing before you professional in multiple industries, and I'm here because this is the truth. My brother died of sickle cell in 2020 after 52 years of struggling and pain. This medicine could have helped him. My mother just died in 2021 because of Alzheimer's. This medicine, in one form or another, would have helped her had I been exposed to it earlier. So I'm a little emotional when I talk about this, because this is more than just, should we regulate this, should we regulate that? This change is going to come no matter, you can be wherever you are, it's coming to you. It's not something that can be stopped. It is the truth. It is something that it's been around since the beginning of time. I teach history, and I study history. We find it in places that worship was occurring thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. So my grandfather, who had a third grade education, said, don't overcomplicate things. Handle the things that are right in front of you. Do the things that are right. And make sure that at the end of the day, where you stand is someplace that you can tell your future generations you feel good about. So it's a lot of people on both sides that stand to make money or lose money, depending on which way decisions are made. But the truth is still the truth, and the medicine is still the medicine, And whether it becomes something that is recreational, it's just like anything else. Thank you.
Alrighty, we're getting down to the hour, so we'll see if there's another comment online and if there are any other comments in the gallery, and we will take a couple more.
One last question. If the city decides to allow outdoor consumption, will the city also consider limiting the number of outdoor consumption areas?
That's an excellent question, and that would be something that we would have to investigate. I think some of the issues that we would face is that like uses aren't necessarily treated the same in terms of the limits, and we would want to make sure that all of those things were being treated equally across the board. But definitely something to consider, something that we would review moving forward if we did.
Great. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. And are there any last comments in the gallery? One more? All righty.
My name is Rachel. I am a cannabis insurance agent. I also have children of 10 and 13 who are straight A students. I feel strongly that my responsibility is to educate them on the good, the bad, the ugly. It is what it is. We are coming into a new age of thinking, a new age of living, and cannabis on the forefront has many more benefits than it does have negative, drawing a blank here in my thought process. But overall, the consumption, outside consumption, I'm totally in support of. I don't think it would have any harm in the out view of things, and that's my opinion.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, well, I really appreciate everybody joining us this evening. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact us. We have a number of city contacts listed here. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me or anybody in our department, and we would be glad to take those.
Also, Catherine, if you haven't signed in, if you could please do that. That way we can keep you up to date on future events regarding this particular topic. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can get a hold of me through that.
Oh, okay,
I'm
great.
the Stony promoter.